saying if you're going to buy a stock, you should do certain things.
Right.
If you're not willing to do these things, you should leave your money in the bank.
We begin with Peter Lynch. Time magazine has called him America's #1 money manager. During the 13 years he headed the Fidelity Magellan Fund, it was a top-ranked general equity mutual fund. His new book, Beating the Street, offers advice on picking stocks and maximizing profits, and he's here to talk to us about a lot of things. Peter, welcome to the broadcast. You wrote a book called One Up on Wall Street, and I think that's one of the best-selling books ever about Wall Street, if I'm not correct, and you can correct me. And so why then did you write another book?
Okay. The reason I wrote it was I try to explain to people their great advantages, their edges they have, and that they should get involved in stocks, and they should do it on the right basis.
This was on the first book.
Right.
Yeah.
And obviously I didn't make a great impression because the percent of people's assets involved in stocks has gone down. In 1960, people had 40% of their financial assets, including their house, in stocks and mutual funds. In 80, that was down to 25%. It's now down to 17%.
And why do you think that is?
Well, I think people, in the decade of the 80s was the best decade this century for stocks. I think people managed to lose money in the 80s doing it themselves because their methods were so flawed. So I really feel as though I wanted people to understand. I don't want anybody to buy a stock. I'm saying if you're going to buy a stock, you should do certain things.
Right.
If you're not willing to do these things, you should leave your money in the bank.
Your philosophy was, if you find something that you identify with. I remember there was a story of your wife and her hose. You knew that this was a product that was better. You used to stay at La Quinta Motel, and the service was better, whatever was better.
The price was good.
And the price was good too. And you said, this is a place that I can determine. I, Peter Lynch, can tell that this is a good product, right?
That's right.
And if these people are making a good product, then their earnings are going to go up, therefore the stock's going to go up. And that's the kind of decision-making process you ought to go through. Do I have it?
You've got it exactly right. Well, I don't think people understand there's 100% correlation with what happens to a company's earnings over several years and what happens to the stock. If the company, McDonald's has done very well as a company, the stock has done very well. People worry about too much money supply, what's happened to the price of oil, who's the president, who's being nominated for the Supreme Court,
it's all
the ozone
earnings.
layer. It has nothing to do. McDonald's earnings go up the next 10 years, the stock will go up.
Yeah, but what they will say to you, Peter, is that, as you know, and why am I telling you this, but anyway, it's fun to tell you this, they're telling you that these other things influence the amount of earnings of a particular company. If we're in a recession, people are not going to spend as much money on going to the movies or whatever they do. And therefore, you got to pay attention to these other things because they impact on earnings.
They are very important, but you have no idea of knowing what they're going to do. Alan Greenspan's the head of the Federal Reserve. He cannot predict interest rates. He'd be the first to tell you.
He can influence them, but he can't predict them.
He cannot predict what long-term interest rates are going to be 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years. He's even surprised how low they are now. So how am I supposed to predict interest rates? How am I supposed to predict the economy? You certainly remember the recession of '82.
Yes.
In 1982, we had a 20% prime rate, 14% unemployment, 12% inflation. I don't remember anybody telling me in 1980 or 81 that was going to happen. All of a sudden, we had the worst recession since the Depression. I didn't read about it in the paper. So it's crazy to think about these things.
Here's a quote from you. I own Dunkin' Donuts. When you own Dunkin' Donuts, you don't have to worry about Korean imports. You don't have to worry about M2 or M3. These are money supply figures, aren't they? And what's happening to the money supply? This is the way you make money. If you don't understand what the company does, you should not be in it. If you could predict the stock market, you could predict the economy, you could predict interest rates. If you go buy the wrong stocks, you're going to lose half your money anyway.
I'm saying people have natural advantages. Let's say what you do for a living is you're involved in the restaurant industry. You supply paper products. You supply kitchen equipment. You help build restaurants. You saw McDonald's. You saw Chi-Chi's. You saw Chili's. You saw Cracker Barrel. You saw Dunkin' Donuts, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Taco Bell.
These are all success stories.
These were 40-fold. You made 40 or 50 times your money. You don't need to make that kind of money many times in your life, right?
No.
That's all you had to do was follow the restaurant industry. People are in industries. They're in the publishing industry. They're in the chemical industry, the paper. Why don't they just stay with that industry? You only need a few stocks a decade. How many good stocks do you need a lifetime? Instead of people, they're in the restaurant industry. They're buying biotechnology stocks. The people in the chemical industry
nothing about
know nothing
biotech.
about it. The people in the chemical industry are buying oil stocks. It's absolutely absurd. People don't understand their natural advantages, and they don't use them. So that's bad, number one. But worse, number two, is if you don't think you're a good ice skater, or if you're convinced you're not a good cellist, you're not going out and try it. But people are buying stocks anyway. They're not discouraged. They just think it's a gamble. So therefore, they go forward and they bet on one stock for a week and a half, and it goes up, and they make $2 on it. Then they sell it and they buy something else. When 3 years is over, all they've done is generate a lot of commissions, and they've probably lost money. That's a mistake.
So your advice is what?
If you don't understand a company, if you can't explain it to a 10-year-old in 2 minutes or less,
yes,
don't own it. Because when it goes down, let's say the stock goes down 2 points.
You won't understand what's going on.
What do you do? Do you buy more? Do you flip a coin?
And chances are your broker doesn't either?
He or she certainly doesn't know about it. I mean, who knows what all these things are with auto back planes and mega flops? Who knows what all these
So buy what you know.
Buy in your industry, buy what you know, buy local companies.
Yeah, so suppose you don't have an industry. I mean, you don't really...
You buy local companies, companies in your own industry. 10 years after Walmart went public, 10 years after
Walmart.
10 years after it went public, it's a 25-year-old company now. You could have bought the stock and made 50 times your money on it. 50 times.
This is, if you bought it 10 years after
it was public already.
Yeah.
It already gone up 5-fold. So you could have made 250-fold. But I'm saying, let's say you were in a town, they came into it and they said, boy, these prices are great, they're doing terrific, I like the bargains. And you checked it out. You spent a little bit of work on it.
Yeah.
I mean, people are very careful. When they buy a dishwasher, they do some research. They'll put $10,000 in some stock they hear on a bus. So if you did a little bit of research, you say, Walmart's in only 10% of the country. They're not even saturated there. Why can't they go to the rest of the country?
Right.
I picked 21 stocks early in 1992. Some work, some don't. I follow those companies. Some of the companies, the fundamentals deteriorate. Some they improve. I watch those companies go through the year. And I talk about a wonderful example is a 7th grade class.
Yeah.
The teacher of that read my book. And my first book that you were talking about, you and I did a show on that in Washington.
Right.
You remember that show? This is a long time ago. She read the book, and I said, if you made it through 5th grade math, you can do it in the stock market. She says, okay. She started teaching it in 7th grade, 7th grade class. These kids had to study companies. They had to look at their balance sheets to see if they're solvent. And they picked stocks. These stocks were up 69% over 2 years when the market was up only 20. And they picked stocks like Limited, they picked The Gap, they picked Walt, they understood these companies. They also picked IBM. I lost money on that too. I mean, everybody makes mistakes.
Everybody did, yeah.
But I'm saying this was a school, St. Agnes School in Arlington, Mass. But in addition, in the decade of the 80s, there's 8,000 investment clubs. These are amateur, sort of average people just investing. These investment clubs, 62% of them, of these clubs, beat the market. In the decade of the 80s, only 25% of professionals beat the market.
Right, let me go back to one other subject. You're coming back to Fidelity, aren't you? Aren't you going to do something?
When I finish this book, I've been working about 1 or 2 days a week the last year and a half on this book.
Right.
Now I'm done with the book. I'm going to go back to maybe 1 day a week, working with the younger analysts, just listening to them, talking to them. I'm not telling them to buy Xerox,
So you're not
to sell
rejoining
Xerox.
your old lifestyle?
Not totally. I'm not going to run another fund. 13 years was plenty of running a fund. I'm just going to work with younger analysts, let them ask questions, I'll ask them questions. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Now, do you manage any money for anybody other than yourself?
No, I manage money with other people for some charities.
Right.
But no, I don't manage anybody's accounts.
You're not
Zero.
doing some mutual fund,
No,
some pension
zero.
fund,
No,
some
nothing. I'm out.
university
Went cold
fund.
turkey. No.
All right.
You
Cold
got-
turkey, did you?
Cold turkey.
Now, are you happy you did this? I mean,
Oh,
obviously
delighted. It's great. No, I
and
love
you
it.
like your new life?
Oh, it's fabulous.
All
Yeah.
right. 4 or 5 years ago, you just said, I've been managing all this money. I'm going to quit.
Yep, that's right.
And you went to do what?
Well, actually, I wanted to spend more time with my wife and my children.
Right.
And it was an interesting situation because I loved my job. I adored my job. And I liked outside activities. And when I was young, you know, I wasn't involved in charity work until I was 30.
Yeah.
No activities. Younger children, you just read them a book and good night moon and they fall asleep and it's all over. When they get older, there's more time involved. So I enjoyed the family. But I was leaving for work at 6 in the morning. I was getting home at 7 o'clock at night, 6 days a week.
This was in Boston?
Yeah, traveling 14 days a month. It was just too much. So I said, I said, that's it, I can't take it. And fortunately, I had made enough money to say I could give up the job, so I didn't have to give up the family or the outside activities.
And so what happened then? So you did what with your
Well, I
life?
cut back from about a 80, 90 hour week to a 40 or 50 hour week, and in the morning I make breakfasts and lunches for the kids, and I do the spelling words and the Spanish words, and Carolyn does the math and the science, and I see Carolyn in the morning, and off I go to a place. You have to go, in my opinion, you have to go somewhere to do something. If you stay at home, you wind up answering the telephone or watching cartoons, so or falling asleep, taking a nap, so she does the hard work. And I go, Fidelity gave me an office, and I have a secretary, and I spend the majority of the time working on charity things like inner city schools, inner city libraries, inner city housing, United
Helping
Way.
people manage their money or
No, not at all. None
Just,
of that, no.
just
Some of the charities I'm on the investment committee of some of the Museum of Fine Arts. I'm involved in Mass General Hospital, Boston College, but United Way. But all the extra things I added to were real hands-on, actually being involved in charitable activities.